Did you know that the gastroenterologists used to believe that our digestive tract was sterile? And it wasn't until the 80s the science have discovered that our digestive tract, particularly the stomach and the intestines, had their own microbiome ecosystem. And now in our modern day, we talk a lot about the gut microbiome as well as the gut lining and how they're important in terms of our digestive system. So today we're going to dive into probably the most popular subtopics of gut health, our gut microbiome and the gut lining. This is part 3 of Gut Health 101. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about what is the gut microbiome, what is the gut lining, and what do they do. We're going to talk about how they come together, what can cause the gut microbiome and gut lining to be disrupted and not work well, and what do we see as the results of that? What are the objective measures that we see when it comes to gut lining, gut microbiome, and doable wellness tips when it comes to supporting these guys. And stick around as I'm going to share some secrets about some of the popular gut health tips that are out there that can tend to actually make things worse. Let's dig in. Let's talk about the gut lining really quick. So your gut lining is essentially a very thin layer of cells that line the digestive tract. And I mean thin. Their job is to decide what can go in or out into the bloodstream past that barrier. Normally, things like vitamins, mineral, water are allowed to cross, all the while others that don't belong are not allowed. Think of it as like a security line. They really get to choose who goes in and who goes out. Now, why the gut lining matters so much is that whatever goes past that barrier into the bloodstream can now go into other parts of your body, like your brain, immune system, other organs and tissues. So it's really important to allow the good things versus the bad things. Now, what about the gut microbiome? Your gut microbiome is essentially an ecosystem of mostly bacteria, but there are some viruses and fungi. There's trillions of them living in your gut microbiome right now. Think of your microbiome as a garden. There are different varieties and species that live in there. Some are really good, some are really just kind of there, and some can stir up some trouble if they're not in check. And our microbiome has various roles for us. They can help digest fiber, they can metabolize our nutrients, toxins, medications, other substances. They help to produce vitamins like vitamin K, B vitamins. They can help to maintain the integrity of our gut lining. They can help regulate inflammation, our immune system, protects us from a lot of different pathogens, aka the bad guys. And then they also communicate with our brain. So how do our gut lining and gut microbiome come together? Well, when everything works really well, the gut microbiome and our gut lining have sort of a mutual relationship. Healthy gut bacteria help to maintain our gut lining, all the while our gut lining help to protect our gut microbiome from any of the bad guys that can come in. So then what happens when these are compromised? When our gut microbiome gets compromised, that weakens our gut lining. And when our gut lining gets weakened, that allows the floodgate of all the bad guys, which can trigger inflammations so that not only it affects the gut, but the rest of our body as well. And you might ask, what can cause these guys to not work well anymore? There's so many out there. First, dietary factors. If there is not enough of fiber intake, there's more processed foods, there's more excess sugar intake, artificial sweeteners. Environmental factors like lack of exercise, excess alcohol consumption, any sort of exposure to toxins, even chronic stress. Some of the gut factors, food poisoning, any sort of like parasite or other infections, even conditions like IBS, celiac disease, inflammatory bowel disease, constipation, or anything that can really slow down the gut motility, even conditions that really mess with our gut barrier, medications like recurrent antibiotic use, proton pump inhibitors or PPIs, antacids, SSRIs, metformin, even pain medications like NSAIDs, sometimes even laxatives, and others like if you already have autoimmune conditions or just aging. So then what can we see as a result of our gut microbiome and gut lining being compromised? This is also the very interesting part, is that it's not just digestive symptoms, it can actually encompass a lot of systemic symptoms as well. So things like bloating, food sensitivities or food intolerances, fatigue, brain fog, joint pain, headache and migraines, skin issues, frequent illnesses, hormonal imbalances, autoimmune flares if you already have an autoimmune condition. And again, most of these are more systemic symptoms rather than digestive symptoms. That's how impactful your gut microbiome and gut lining are. So then what are the objective measures when it comes to looking at the gut microbiome and the gut lining? If you can already tell a pattern, most times in conventional side, it's really assessing for specific conditions, right? Is there IBS? Is there inflammatory bowel disease? Is there celiac? Are there infections? More of ruling in and ruling out, which are still very, very important. When it comes to imaging, there's really not much out there, right? Most times it's colonoscopy, endoscopy. Oftentimes they'll do biopsies to see, are there any sort of physiological degradation or damages to these linings or the structures, but nothing that is very specific to gut microbiome and gut lining specifically in terms of just assessing their health. When it comes to conventional tests, same thing. Most times it's looking at, are there any sort of the pathogens or infections that are causing this issue? Are there any sort of occult blood or general inflammation markers? But nothing very direct in terms of the gut microbiome and the gut lining. And before I go into the naturopathic world, one thing I do want to clear up is for me as a naturopathic doctor, I am looking for both the conventional side and the naturopathic objectives, right? It's very important to see, are there specific conditions that are putting those gut microbiome and gut lining at a compromise? But if not, if things are, let's say, normal in terms of colonoscopy, endoscopy, a lot of the markers, then that kind of gets into, okay, there's something else that we need to look at. And that's where a lot of the naturopathic tool belt really come in. So in the naturopathic world, we often use specialty tests from SIBO lactulose breath test to see if there's any sort of overgrowth in the small intestines. Are there excess gas productions? Which SIBO, to keep in mind, is a type of dysbiosis. Dysbiosis is essentially a fancy word to say there is an imbalance of gut microbiome. There's also one of my favorites, which is a comprehensive stool test. This is really cool, and I'm biased here when I say this, but it tests for pathogens. It tests for the good gut commensal bacteria. It tests for potential pathogenic, opportunistic pathogens, if you will. It also looks at other markers like digestion, gut inflammation, gut immune system, zonulin. I always run zonulin as the marker when it comes to looking at the gut lining integrity. This is also interesting where I've seen a lot of practitioners in both the naturopathic and functional world not really run it. So at this point, we looked at the objective measures. What can we do in terms of supporting the gut microbiome and the gut lining? Please note this is not medical advice. Please consult your healthcare provider. Always, first and foremost, we are treating the very cause of what's causing those disruptions, right? If there is imbalance of the gut microbiome, you want to see what is overgrowing. What are the opportunities or the situation that is letting that really overgrowing more and more? If there's overgrown bacteria or pathogens that don't belong there, it's very important that we need to eradicate that. Conventionally, antibiotics are usually the standard of care. Naturopathically, we do a lot of antimicrobial herbs. There's so many out there, but I will say probably the fan favorites are berberine, oregano oil, artemisia, neem. But even before that, what gave the opportunity for these to grow? Is there chronic stress that was so prominent that led to the dysbiosis? If so, then we have to manage stress. Probiotics can be of help, especially in a low commensal bacteria. Probiotics don't always help, and I'll get into that in a bit. What about the gut lining? For example, were there, excess alcohol intake that was coming in and disrupting the gut barrier? If so, then we have to eliminate the alcohol consumption while we work on the gut microbiome and healing up the gut lining. One of my favorite things when it comes to gut lining is a lot of demulcent healing herbs or nutrients. Things like aloe vera, zinc carnosine, marshmallow root, DGL, even glutamine can be helpful. Food-wise, okra is really great when it comes to healing up the gut lining. Making sure that you are eating whole foods, maybe including probiotic and prebiotic food sources. helping digestion here, things that we talked about in episode 1, bitter foods, bitter herbs, things like that. Now, here's some secrets, things I've seen over the years treating people, many people do for gut health that seem supportive, but actually tend to worse things for them. First, probiotics. Yes, they can be helpful. There are a lot of great studies when it comes to probiotics and for XYZ different reasons. If someone has a microbiome overgrowth, think of your microbiome as a cup. When there is a state of overgrowth, there is a lot of stuff in that cup to the point that it's starting to spill out. And in a state of essentially overflowing, you add more things, even if they're good, and that's going to stir up more trouble. It's going to overflow a lot more. So adding in probiotics at that stage can tend to make things worse, whether it be more of GI symptoms popping up or increase in the intensity of your GI symptoms. Same goes for prebiotics. Prebiotics are fibers that really help to feed the bacteria, but in a state of overgrowth, if you add prebiotic supplements, it is also feeding the bad guys, not only just the good guys. So then that gives them more energy, more resources for them to just stir up even more trouble. Number 2, gut protocols. There's so many variations out there, and a lot of them are very great. The one mistake I see people do is that they'll be put on a gut protocol and they do everything all at once. That's really overwhelming to not only your gut, but for the rest of your body. That can create a lot of environment for die-off reactions to happen if there is overgrowth, bacteria, and other pathogens that we're killing. And the more overwhelm and uproar there is, the more your body is going to have a hard time healing. Breaking down the protocol into different parts, making sure that there is ample time and space for each part of the protocol are probably the biggest key when it comes to when I work with my patients. Number 3, no nervous system work. We're going to go a lot more into this in the next episode when we talk about the gut-brain axis, but I will tell you this. You can do everything right in terms of eating right, doing the protocol right, whatever it is. If the nervous system and particularly the gut-brain axis is not supported, things just tend to come back. So a lot of times we have these recurrent symptoms, things like, oh, I did this thing, it went away. A few months later, all the symptoms come right back. And it's this vicious cycle where you feel like a dog chasing its tail. You're doing all the right things, you're eating all the right things, but things are just coming back, and it can be very, very discouraging. Make sure to keep that in mind because next week, our last part of Gut Health 101 series, we're going to talk about the gut immunity and the gut-brain axis. Make sure to subscribe and follow along. If you have any questions on today's episode about gut health, anything that you want to see specifically around gut health, make sure to leave a comment down below. See you next week.